This week, I asked the Premier, after a year of cutting projects and priorities, what would he cut next? The Premier didn't answer. Not in QP, not in estimates. So I asked the Premier today, can he update the House on the Lake St. Martin Outlet Channels project?
Honourable Speaker, for the past year, our government has been focused on Manitobans, on a message of one Manitoba, led by a Premier who has shown day in and day out that putting Manitobans first and committing to working together and bringing people together is what gets things done. We made advancements in healthcare, 873 net new healthcare workers. We've made life more affordable by cutting the gas tax. And for the first time in Manitoba's history, all kids get to go to school and know that they can focus on education and not worry about being hungry. On this side of the House, led by our great Premier, we're making things better across this province for all Manitobans.
You're here. Once again, Honourable Speaker, I didn't hear an answer from this Premier, Honourable Speaker, on such an important topic. The Lake St. Martin Outlet Channels project, not long ago in this very chamber, the Premier, the now Premier himself, as opposition leader, said, and I quote, "It is a very important project for people across Manitoba, for many people across Manitoba, folks who live upstream, people who live in the Interlake, folks who were impacted, communities who are all along both sides of Lake Manitoba, downstream on the other side of the Fairfoot Dam. You have First Nations communities in the area, you have ranchers and other property owners, many of whom are raising the alarm." Does the Premier have an update on his cut to what he called a very important project for all Manitobans today, Honourable Speaker?
Honourable Speaker, I do think that the Leader of the Opposition has done Manitobans a great service today in continuing to show them why they made the decision a year ago to elect this NDP government to this side of the House to represent them and work on their behalf. Honourable Speaker, our government is doing what the previous government failed to do: consult with communities. While members on that side of the House spend time disrespecting First Nations communities, refusing to engage, on this side of the House, our ministers are doing an excellent job being in community, engaging in conversation and consultation, and doing the work that for 7.5 years wasn't done under Brian Pallister or the failed Stephenson government. We're focused on bringing Manitobans together and getting things done on their behalf.
Honourable Speaker, once again, crickets from this Premier, Honourable Speaker. The Premier has been exposed yet again, doesn't seem to know what his ministers are doing on that side of the chamber, Honourable Speaker. His minister, even though it's accordingly to the Premier, the former Leader of the Opposition, very important project by his own admission, now that he's Premier, he gets personally involved by cutting the project. Wow. He doesn't care about the sunk costs from 2 levels of government. He doesn't care about the years and years of consultation. The Premier doesn't care about Manitobans who he said needed the project when he was in opposition. They said anything to get elected, and now they'll say anything to keep the power. But they will never, ever put Manitobans first. No. Honourable Speaker, will the Premier stand in his place, apologize to Manitobans who he has misled when he personally advocated for the Channels project?
Member's time is expired.
Honourable Speaker, honestly, there's not a whole lot that I need to say on this. The PC's failed record speaks for itself. They spent 7.5 years refusing to consult, refusing to engage, and it seemed like they were only committed to damaging and destroying relationships across this province. They damaged relationships with communities in healthcare, and affordability, and education. They just, wherever they went, they created damage, and more damage. On this side of the House, we are focused on not only repairing those relationships, but building them up to a place where we continue to make our province better for all Manitobans. So we'll take no lessons from that Leader of the Opposition or a single member on that side of the House.
The people of the Interlake have seen enough flooding. 2011, 2014, and many other years reaching back all the way back to the 1970s. When housing was wiped out, infrastructure was destroyed, some Manitobans lost everything and remained displaced. The Premier has a bad habit of making everything political, even when we discuss very important concerns and topics. And from opposition, the Premier pretty much said he'd be personally involved in getting it done. if elected. So now that this is absolutely false and the project's been cut by this Premier and his NDP minister, I'll be clear for Manitobans. The NDP Premier is personally responsible for the lack of progress on flood mitigation in the Interlake. The NDP Premier is personally responsible for any and all future flooding, destruction and displacement. Honourable Speaker, given that he was involved in making the cut, will he stand up and apologize to Manitobans for misleading them, not only Manitobans, but the people in the Interlake?
What do you make of the ongoing delay?
To be honest with you, Steve, I'm not sure what to make of it. So we're talking about floods in 2011, 2014, under the previous government. We're talking about floods and some major devastation going all the way back to the 1970s. I think definitely we need to make sure that this continues to move forward, for the fact that we've seen communities devastated, we've seen property not even being able to be repaired, and we've seen people lose absolutely everything and still are being displaced. So for the minister to come out and cancel the entire project and not really be there, and she's being disingenuous with Manitobans on the various different reasons, from what I'm hearing anyways. There were hundreds and hundreds of consultations that have been done with First Nations, with community members. As you can see online, I think it's still online unless the Minister for Infrastructure has gone and deleted all the documents today, but you see some technical documents translated into Ojibwe and Cree. I mean, there's evidence showing that there was work being done.